Hello, I'm in a car park next to Sydney International Airport, and today I'm flying to Melbourne with Qantas. Now they normally put 737s on this route, but today's flight is in a Boeing 747-400ER. And as you may know, they're retiring all of those by the end of this year, so I'm taking every opportunity to get on board one. I've also got a camera which is now filming in 4K, so I'm keen to collect as much good footage as possible. So let's head over to the terminal. The journey begins at check-in, and a real highlight of Terminal 3 at Sydney Domestic is this replica Avro 504K, which was the first ever aircraft delivered to Qantas in January 1921. It was a British design but assembled in Mascot right near the current location of this airport, and was used to fly around Western Queensland, doing joy flights and raising awareness of the idea of flying. It's assembled from wood and fabric, which at the time was the best compromise between strength and weight. It had a single 6-cylinder engine which propelled it to a cruising speed of 105 km an hour. For comparison's sake, our 747 today would cruise at around 930 km an hour. It's fascinating to compare this 1920s aircraft with today's 747, which was a design from only 50 years later, as a jumbo first flew in 1969. Now today's flight is an economy, although I did a very similar flight last year in business class from Sydney to Brisbane, which gives perspective from sitting in front of the wing. I've also included a whole lot of history and technical details about this aircraft type, which is unique to Qantas. I will repeat some of that information, and after this video make sure you check out my other video and I'll link to that below. Once we were through security, I killed some time plane spotting around the terminal. As I mentioned in the intro, the main domestic workhorse of the Qantas fleet is the Boeing 737-800. This particular one now is called Retro Roo 2, and while it's a brand new aircraft, it was painted in the Qantas 707 livery from the late 1950s, and I reckon it looks pretty fantastic. This little Dash 8 shot past, and you may notice that they actually run with a single engine when they're taxiing home to help save fuel. And here's our aircraft, VH Oscar Echo Hotel, which is a Boeing 747-400 extended range, which was delivered brand new to Qantas in 2003. Now, while a 17-year-old aircraft might sound old to you, that's actually pretty normal for an airliner. In fact, the VC-25, which is Air Force One, first flew in 1987, and that's only about to be replaced around now. After being distracted by this little incident, which I've since heard, and I'm not joking, was actually a shampoo spill in the cargo hold, we took off to the departure gate. One of the really cool things about this flight was that it was advertised to the public, so it was essentially just 364 plane nerds sharing their geekery. There were heaps of kids flying, which is really cool because for many of them this would have been their last and maybe their only opportunity to ever fly in the Queen of the Skies. And in fact for many adults as well, this domestic 747 flight was potentially their last ever in the jumbo. As you would expect, there were a lot of people already lining up to board, so I went to capture some views of the aircraft. Now I do quite like to film the aircraft pulling into the gate, although as you can see now the view wasn't great, so I joined the queue. I entered via the forward doors, and it really highlights just how long this aircraft is. Here's business class with the aging but still fairly solid Skybed Mark IIs, and I can't wait to fly in one of these to Santiago in a few months, and of course I'll do a video on that. Next up is Premium Economy, which is always a great option if the budget or points balance can't be squeezed to get you into business, and then we're into Economy. Now I usually research my seats fairly well, but as so happens 56K doesn't actually have a proper window, although thankfully I could lean forward and still enjoy the view. The economy seats are in a 3-4-3 layout, and unlike some modern aircraft, everyone gets their own overhead air vent, which is exciting. Otherwise, it's a fairly standard economy seat with a touchscreen, tray table, adjustable armrest which include power plugs in them, and this rather weird net thing which is you can rest your feet in it. So here's the USB port in the armrest and no window, although as you can see I can kind of lean forward and see out this one. One thing I really noticed on board the 747, especially in comparison to newer aircraft like the 787 and A380, was how noisy the interior is, with this unfortunate hum drowning out some of the announcements. The chief flight attendant did an awesome intro and tribute to the 747, and you'll hear that shortly once we back out and the flaps extend. This entire aircraft is an engineering marvel, and the wings in particular are very cool. As you'll see shortly, the three-part slotted flaps extend from the wing's trailing edge, which is behind it. Now, according to Wikipedia, this increases the wing's surface area by 21% and lift by almost 100%. After sitting and waiting for some landing aircraft to arrive, including this Royal Australian Air Force Dassault Falcon 7X, it was our turn to take off. We took off south and then briefly out over the ocean before crossing back overland just around Wollongong. I commented in another video that I really love the view of sunrise and sunset from 40,000 feet, but another in-flight view I love is breaking up through the clouds as you ascend. As I mentioned earlier, today's aircraft is a 747-400ER, which stands for Extended Range. Qantas were actually the only airline that bought these, continuing a tradition where Boeing specially modifies aircraft for unique Qantas requirements, which is essentially a very long flight across the Pacific and Indian Oceans. The extended range Dash 400s, of which Qantas had 6 of them, are the only remaining jumbos left in their fleet, and sometimes called 910Ks, recognising the 910,000 pound, or just over 400,000 kilograms, maximum takeoff weight, and literally over half of that weight can be made up of fuel. The increased takeoff weight was due to the strengthening of the landing gear and structural modifications, so it could have either 1 or 2 extra fuel tanks and therefore fly another 800 kilometers or carry an extra 6,800 kilograms of freight. The ER models also came with these upgraded General Electric CF6 engines, while the standard Dash 400s came with either the CF6s or the good old Rolls-Royce RB211s. As this was just a 72-minute flight, there was just a snack provided, which was fine. Once we escaped Sydney, most of New South Wales had reasonably clear skies, and it was great to see everything below getting a little greener. As many of you would know, Australia has had some really bad bushfires over the last few months, and only just this last week or two, the entire east coast of the continent has had a bucket load of rain, extinguishing the fires and bringing some relief to the drought. I flew this route just a few weeks ago, and sadly it was very black and brown, so it was great seeing everything a bit greener. Just southwest of Bright, we started our descent from a cruising altitude of 36,000 feet. To help speed up the whole process, you can see the speed brakes were deployed just as we flew over Mansfield. I'll keep quiet until after we land, but make sure you listen carefully to the announcement shortly after we touch down. The views of the condensation were pretty epic, and while I obviously prefer to fly in clear sunny skies, having just gone through the summer that we have, it was actually pretty nice to see some more rain. The crew were obviously also caught up in the 747 festiveness, so they announced that afterwards people were invited to visit the flight deck. I had to run to the next flight, but it was cool to see the gate full of people taking photos and selfies of the aircraft. It was also quite poignant that we were parked up next to a new Boeing 787 Dreamliner, which is essentially the aircraft's replacement. And as always, thanks for watching. Please give the video a thumbs up, and if you enjoyed it, check out my channel for many more aviation geek videos and find me on Instagram and Facebook. And finally, please comment below on what the Qantas Boeing 747 means to you and share any particular memories of it you may have. Thanks again.